Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you this evening for Pet Partners Advocacy Bootcamp. My name is Mary Margaret Callahan. I'm the Chief Mission Officer here at Pet Partners. You should be able to see Pet Partners screen deck on your screen and hear me. If you are having any technical troubles, you can contact me through the chat. I'll also be accepting questions throughout the evening. So there's a spot on your control panel. If you have a question you'd like answered, you're welcome to type that in at any time. You don't have to hold it until the end of our presentation. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Brandon Fuller. Brandon is with Raise the Roots, an organization that Pet Partners is pleased to work with around our advocacy work. And he's going to help take us through some steps for those of you who may not have done a lot of grassroots advocacy yourself. And so today, this evening, we're looking to cover a few basic things. We want to learn about the Pet Partners Advocacy Program, and then think about what we need to do in order to make successful connections with our legislators and how to most effectively communicate with those legislators and their staff members. We'll talk about how you can attend or host a meeting to talk more about the human-animal bond and the great work that therapy animals can do in your community and in your state and nationally. We've got some wonderful resources to share with you and a story about with some examples of some great work at State House Day. So, Brandon, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. And thank you, Mary Margaret, for that great introduction. I'm excited to be here to talk about Advocacy Bootcamp and get everybody prepared to meet with legislators and start sharing all this great information about pet partners, therapy animals, and the human-animal bond. So thank you for coming. I know it's Wednesday evening, but we really appreciate it, and we hope that you're excited to learn tonight. So just to get started, I want to give a little bit of background on Pet Partners Advocacy Program because in a short time it's grown a lot, thanks in part to all the great contributions that you've made. So we started the Pet Partners Advocacy Program in August 2017, and since then we've already recruited just short of 6,000 advocates. Those 6,000 advocates have done 19,777 online actions, so that includes petition signatures, letters to Congress, tweets to Congress, any kind of an online action that they've taken. We've had 6 of these advocacy webinars so far. Some of them have featured members of Congress, experts, some have featured our advocates and therapy animal handlers sharing their stories. We've had some great victories in the states of Michigan and New York. In Michigan, we were able to stop a bad therapy animal bill from becoming law. And in New York, Mary Margaret was actually a member of a working group to help inform the governor of the state of New York on potential therapy animal standards. We were a member of the Pet and Women's Safety Act Coalition, which was a coalition that worked to promote the Pet and Women's Safety Act. It was made up of a lot of big-time players like pharmaceutical companies, pet supply companies, and individuals who work in the domestic shelter world. And they included us, they asked us to join because of our grassroots advocacy efforts. That Pet and Women's Safety Act Coalition, and thanks to your contributions, was actually successful in getting the PAWS Act signed into law at the end of last year, which is a huge achievement and will result in major funding going to shelters, domestic violence shelters across the country, so that families are welcome with their pets. We've had some great events on Capitol Hill. We had therapy dogs on Capitol Hill and pet night on Capitol Hill. And so as you can see, we've just made a lot of progress in a short time. And I think we're all very proud of the work that we've done and what we've achieved so far. But part of the reason why we're having this boot camp tonight is that we're ready to take some of this online action offline and start educating our advocates about how they can have really meaningful interactions with legislators and start being viewed as experts in their community and among policymakers on the issues that we care about. So to that end, I think the best place to get started is knowing how to familiarize yourself with who your legislators are. You can't really advocate to somebody if you don't know who they are, what office they hold, what their jurisdiction is. And so it's important to get started by thinking about who represents me at the federal level and who represents me here in my state. So the best place to go is a website. This is just an example. You can find several of these websites online, but a website where you can enter your zip code and find out who your representatives are. This particular one will show you your federal representation, your state representation, and in some cases all the way down to your county, city, municipality. So it's very helpful. It'll also provide website links for your representatives. It'll provide sometimes social media links. So it's a great resource when you're trying to find this kind of information out. And just as a great place to get started, looking at who is my member of the House of Representatives and who are my 2 senators at the federal level, and at the state level, who represents me in the state house or the assembly and in the state senate. Once you've identified those people, it's actually pretty simple to learn about them, follow them, and keep up with what it is they're doing and what issues they care about. I'd say that the easiest way to get started is to go on their websites and see if they offer a newsletter that you can subscribe to. These newsletters generally go out once a month. They summarize the issues that they care about, the great interactions they've had with constituents like yourselves potentially. You could also follow them on social media. That's going to be a more frequent stream of information about what they're doing. But what you're really looking for is just a way to understand things like what committees are they on? What issues do they care about? What bills have they co-sponsored in their legislature? And then even learn a little bit about their personal life. You may find that your legislators are dog lovers or cat lovers, or they've had some relationship to a pet that is an entry point for a conversation and beginning to build that relationship with them. So once you've identified who your legislators are, you've signed up for their newsletter, you've signed up to follow them on social media, it's not a bad idea to introduce yourself through email or a written note, especially at the state level. Just writing something to your legislator saying, this is who I am, I'm affiliated with Pet Partners, I'm an advocate for the human-animal bond, here are some issues that are important to me, and here's my contact information, should you ever have any questions. So just to kind of give you an example of the kinds of updates that you might receive once you begin following your legislators. On the left, this is a senator, and this is their newsletter. Senator Tester sends out this newsletter pretty frequently. It's kind of funny, they try to be funny, and includes just different bullet points on what he's been up to, what issues he cares about, what his positions are on those issues. And then you have here I think this is a tweet from a member of the state representatives in the State House of Representatives in Texas. This is actually from our case study that we'll cover a little bit later. And then on the right is a Facebook post from another state representative from Texas. And this has to do with a pet-related event that they attended. So as you can see, just by following them on social media, you might see opportunities to connect with them and say, I noticed that you really care about pets, or you attended this event on pets. Here's some information about therapy animals. I'd love to educate you on the difference between therapy animals and service animals. Once you familiarize yourself with your legislators, the sort of logical next step is learning how to communicate with them. Like I said, the goal here is to take that offline communication and offline interaction, or I'm sorry, online interaction, take that offline and to begin to have a relationship with legislators. That's really where the value of advocacy starts to take hold. I've attended some events where constituent managers in different offices like the House of Representatives or in the United States Senate, they were asked, what is the most meaningful form of communication that actually does shape the member of Congress's view on a particular issue? And you know, they get a lot of emails, they get a lot of phone calls. They said the most meaningful relationship, the most meaningful communication they have is through face-to-face conversations with their constituents. So it's really important. So you might be wondering, well, why should I do this? And what is it about me that makes me an important person to be communicating these issues? So number one, I think it's really important to have the confidence of knowing that you are the expert. You are signing up to be an advocate with Pet Partners. We have tons of great resources on our website that we'll go over shortly so that you can educate yourself and you know these issues. The reality is that many of your state representatives and state senators are people just like you. They're people who work a regular day job, who decided that they wanted to be more involved in their community, to seek public service, whatever their motivation was. But that doesn't mean that just because they won an election, that they're an expert on every issue. I mean, imagine all the issues that they have to vote on and have a say on and evaluate. And so they really do look to their constituents and to outside groups to help educate them on all these issues, to help make them experts. And so as an expert on therapy animals, on the human-animal bond, and on issues affecting pets and their owners, you are the expert, and they want to know you, and they want to know all these great facts that you know. You vote, so as a constituent, you should naturally be somebody that they're interested in hearing from, because all members of Congress, all state legislators want to get reelected. You amplify the Pet Partners leadership voice. I mean, Mary Margaret's amazing, but there's only one of her. And so we need our advocates to be out there speaking out on these issues and making sure that Pet Partners has a voice. And it works. The reality is that a lot of what gets passed came about because people spoke up. Grassroots organizations and members of the public organized. They made their voices heard. They advocated on behalf of the issue that they care about. And one thing I try to always remember is that if we don't speak out for the things that are important to us, the people who maybe are not interested in the issues that are important to us, only their voices are going to be heard. So it's so important that we are part of the conversation. So when we're talking to legislators, these are just some tips, some things that they're probably common sense, but it's always nice to be reminded that you want to have a moment to reflect on your confidence, on why you're there and having this conversation with the legislator or their staff. Identify yourself. Identify what this issue is that you're passionate about and why you're here communicating to them. Be constructive. You're contributing to the work they're doing. You're contributing to moving something forward. We're not just there to criticize or to try to stop something from happening. We want to go and say, this isn't the best route, but why don't we consider this option instead? You want to get personal, and that's where following your legislators on social media and receiving their newsletter can be so helpful, because you may notice something that they say about themselves. Maybe the college that they attended is the same one that you or your children attend, or maybe they have a pet that you've seen referenced somewhere. So it's great to kind of start building that personal relationship. You want to be specific and direct. So we have all these resources that are very specific about specifically what we want to talk about with legislators and what issues we want to advocate for. And don't be shy about asking for what it is you want. These people don't have a lot of time. And so if you have their ear, they want to know, what is it that you want? What is it that you're trying to communicate to them? It's important in every relationship to say thank you. And so this is no exception. Like I said, these people are very busy. They're going to see a lot of constituents. They're going to receive a lot of communication. So it's important to be brief and be organized. Have everything that you want to say together in advance and have all your materials there for them. As part of saying thank you, I think it's also important to follow up. It's likely they're not going to follow up with you. Just like I said, they're very busy people and it's difficult to follow up with everybody. But I think that the advocates who follow up with their legislators are the ones who get remembered. Now you have an email in their inbox with your contact information, so that when an issue arises that they believe you could be helpful on, they're going to reach out to you. They have that email. Be timely. If there's an issue that's arisen in the state legislature that's affecting therapy pets or the human-animal bond, or if you feel that there's a need to educate your legislators on the differences between therapy animals and other service animals, look for those moments where you can raise your voice. Be nice and be a resource. Like I said, these people don't know everything about every issue, and so they're looking for experts, and that's what we are going to try to serve as. So now that we've kind of gotten to know who our legislators are and we've learned the basics of how to communicate with them, the next step is actually having a face-to-face conversation with them. And we've kind of simplified this a lot, but this really summarizes the types of interactions that most people will have with their legislators. It's possible that once you get to know them, you may run into them at the coffee shop, or you may run into them at your kid's school. I know that for some people who are really involved in their community, they regularly interact with policymakers. But I think for most of us, the way that we're going to interact with a policymaker is at a town hall meeting, a district office meeting, through a site visit, or through a Capitol event. And if you are kind of curious about starting any of these. I'm going to go through them all and explain what they are. But if you're ever interested in potentially doing something like this and you don't know where to get started, or you just want a little bit of help, you can always reach out to us at Pet Partners by emailing advocacy@petpartners.org. So first, let's talk about what a town hall meeting is. So town hall meetings can take different shapes. Nowadays, it's not unusual for there to be a telephone town hall meeting, a Facebook town hall meeting, a virtual town hall meeting. But the kind of town hall meetings that we're really looking to attend are ones that happen in your community. So most members of Congress and state legislators are going to have opportunities to go back to the district, and either at a school or at a church, they're going to host a town hall meeting. There are times when different groups will host town hall meetings and invite legislators to attend, and they may be promoting those as well. But you'll see these in the newsletter or on social media. It'll be promoted, and you'll have an opportunity to attend, and it should be something there in your community. Again, we're going to follow those rules of communicating with legislators. We want to be prepared. We want to introduce ourselves, be direct, know in advance what it is you want to communicate. As part of the resources that Pet Partners has put together, we have something called a Leave Behind, which is a document that you can print out at home and take with you, and it summarizes all of the issues important to Pet Partners that you can just hand to the legislator or their staff, just so that you have something that you can give them that they can take back with them. And it has an area there where you can insert your personal contact information so they can get in touch with you.
You know, Brandon, I'm going to interject for a second, because I think if you've not done a town hall meeting before, they're a really great opportunity, and they're a great entry point if you've never done something like this before. One of the success that Brandon talked about in Michigan, where there was some problematic language in a bill that was going forward, one of our Pet Partners volunteers and advocates went to a town hall meeting and was literally the only person who came. So she had a lovely personal conversation with this individual who then understood the difference between therapy animals and the other types of animals they were discussing, and was willing to make the change. And it wasn't stressful or scary or hard. It was just a nice, friendly conversation.
And I think, Mary Margaret, refresh my memory, but after that interaction, that legislator actually asked the Pet Partners volunteer to come to the legislature and talk to some other legislators about some of the things that they're an expert on.
That's right. She then became viewed as an expert, and rightfully so, in this topic. And so she was able to get introduced to other people and just share on a topic that she was already really comfortable talking about. And that can be you too.
Yeah, and I guess to help kind of paint a picture of what these town halls are actually like, obviously in that case it was just a one-on-one conversation because nobody came, but I think in most circumstances it's like an auditorium at an elementary school, and there's an opportunity to sign in because they want to know who came and have an opportunity to potentially follow up. Take a seat, the legislator and their staff should be there greeting people. They might be taking pictures, there might be maybe a local reporter there just to cover what's discussed. They'll introduce themselves, they'll have an opportunity to share the updates that they want you to know, the issues they're tackling, the positions they're taking, the progress they're making, of course. And then they may have some time where they'll ask people to raise their hand, ask questions, bring up things that are important to them. And then afterwards, there'll probably be some time to mix and mingle and communicate with each other. But this is a community event. It's your neighbors who are there to talk to your elected official who has been elected by your community to represent you. And so it shouldn't be an intimidating kind of environment. And it's always great to bring a buddy. So if you think maybe it will be a little bit, you'll be nervous or something, feel free to bring somebody with you who you can take up there and communicate with. And I'm going to say this with all of these events, you want to follow up afterwards. So follow up on social media, maybe share a picture from the event and just say thank you. Shoot an email to the staff or the legislator, and then it's always nice to get a handwritten note, you know that. So if you have a moment, writing a handwritten note is also nice. We also, I think it's just important to emphasize, we don't want to be another face in the crowd. We want them to know that we're not just people who showed up to listen to this town hall. We want them to view us as experts on these topics. So the second type of meeting that we want to talk about is district office meetings. So you might not know this, but your legislators at the federal and state level are actually given office space in their district where many of their staff do a lot of the day-to-day operations. And these are things like helping constituents with Social Security applications or whatever the issues are that might arise, Veterans Affairs issues in the community. And so they have office space there. When the legislator is out of session, they come back and they sometimes work from their district office. They host meetings there. They host events there. And so there are these district offices spread out all throughout your district, all throughout your community. And they're honestly just in strip malls and commercial office buildings. But it's a great time to meet with staff and legislators because it's away from the hustle and bustle of the Capitol where they do have a lot of meetings. So it's a great time to maybe get some alone time, some face-to-face time. They may be more flexible. They're probably more comfortable there than in their Capitol office. They're not rushing off and worrying about rushing off for a vote. So district office meetings, I think, are sort of the next logical step from a town hall meeting and an opportunity for you to get to know your legislator. So one of the things we want to encourage you to do is to reach out to your legislator. You can find on their website, usually, they list district offices. And so you could find the one that's closest to you, and there should be a phone number on there. And you can call and say, let's, as an example, I'm a therapy animal handler, and I'd love to come to the district office someday and introduce my partner and my pet and have an opportunity to talk to the member or the staff about issues that are relevant to therapy animals and the human-animal bond. So just reaching out to them and saying, is there a time when the legislator is available? It's great to provide dates when you're available because obviously they're trying to manage a very busy schedule, and so it's easier for them if you give them times that you're available. You want to tell them which district office you want to meet in. They're going to want to know your name, your address, because they will want to verify that you're a constituent, all of your contact information, the name of any of your friends. I definitely encourage you to bring friends, a buddy who can come and who's also potentially a handler or an advocate. And if you're planning on bringing a pet, just verifying that is okay in that commercial space where they operate to bring a pet. You want to bring a camera, and potentially you could ask the office if it's acceptable for you to reach out to maybe a local reporter that you might know, the local newspaper, for them to attend as well and take pictures and see what happens in your interaction. So these are all very similar in that you want to go prepared, organized, have your resources, your talking points, have a leave behind, and educate the legislator or their staff on their issues. And again, you want to follow up afterwards. So the next type of face-to-face communication that we're going to talk about is a site visit. So a site visit this is really geared towards therapy animal handlers, and a site visit is an opportunity for a legislator and their staff to observe the work we do in real time, in real life. Obviously, there's a lot of sensitivity here because many of the interactions that we have are not the type that are public or are appropriate for this kind of an interaction. But if you're fortunate enough to have opportunities to share your work with a legislator, it would be very impactful for them to understand what therapy animal handling is and why it's so valuable. So obviously we want to gain approval from our client and from the location. The kind of things that we may be looking to do with the legislator when they come is offer them a tour of the facility if that's appropriate. We need to be prepared that photographs will be taken, that potentially members of the media will be invited by the legislator to attend. It's important to coordinate these events once you've gotten permission with the district office. That's the right group to be reaching out to. And again, it's the same thing. We need to confirm dates. They're going to want to know the location. They're going to want confirmation that you've gotten approval for this. They're going to know logistics because they've got a busy schedule, and obviously they want to make sure that they can prepare the legislator for what this experience is going to be like and that it won't be embarrassing or disorganized in any way. So is there parking? What's the experience going to be like? They're going to want all that information in advance and probably the contact information for your client and the location so they can confirm everything. It's great to bring a partner who can answer questions during the interaction so that while you're having your interaction with your client, The legislator can be communicating with your partner, asking questions about what exactly is happening and not intrude on that interaction. Just as always, we want to have all of our documentation ready, our leave behind, and if it's appropriate, we want to be having fun. Like we want the legislator to feel free to ask questions, to be engaged, because the opportunity here is for them to see the work that you do and for you to communicate why you do this work and why it's so important. And we're going to follow up. So the last event is a big one, and we're just going to kind of review what it is. But a capital event is something you may be familiar with. You've probably seen it on TV. This is the kind of event where a group of people are invited to the state capitol. They have a big rally on the steps of the capitol. They all wear matching shirts, and they have posters and banners, and there's speakers who are giving inspiring speeches to get them ready to go into the capitol and meet with legislators and talk about the issues that are important to them. So these are events that feature several advocates and volunteers. And kind of the construct of this is that the advocates come together, they're trained on what the issues are, what the talking points are. They're generally also trained about how to have a conversation with the legislator, what to expect, how to be comfortable in that setting. There's generally a rally with speakers. They have all of the meetings with the legislators scheduled in advance so that you'll get an agenda with the locations of where the offices are that you'll be attending. And then sometimes at the Capitol, there might be an interactive area where people who are just passing through, staff, legislators, whoever happens to be in the Capitol that day, can see you, they can see your pets, they can talk to you about therapy animals. Sometimes there's coordination with media, so whether that's being done by pet partners or by the legislators, there's usually Capitol media there or district media. We could always host a virtual version of a Capitol Hill Day that corresponds with what we're doing in the Capitol, so giving our online advocates opportunities to participate as well. And then afterwards, it's so important to follow up with each office who hosted the meetings and the staff who helped us organize all of this, because organizing something of this scale requires not just pet partners, team members, and not just our advocates, but some legislators will help us get space and help us set up the meetings. And then there's generally staff who actually work for the Capitol itself who are involved in planning and orchestrating all of this. I would say that right now, we're not going to be planning any of these very soon, but definitely this is sort of the end point of all of these efforts. We're building all these relationships so that ultimately we'll have an opportunity to host one of these Capitol events and have so much impact when all of our advocates come together and we sort of descend on the Capitol and have an opportunity to share everything we know. So we want to set you up for success, and we have tried our best to put together some great resources for you. I want to encourage you to go to petpartners.org/advocacy, and that's where you're going to find all of these materials. So we have talking points there. They walk through who Pet Partners is, what a therapy animal is, what the human-animal bond is, all the things that are important to us. We have a leave behind document that you can print out. You can fill it out with your contact information and take it with you when you have meetings. There's an advocacy manual there that is incredibly valuable. It helps just with some basics like how do you address a member of Congress or a legislator in a letter. So everything you want to know is in this advocacy manual. I really encourage you to flip through it and familiarize yourself with some of that stuff. We obviously have tons of information about pet partners, the human-animal bond, animal-assisted interactions, and then we have our advocacy registration. So if you know somebody who is interested in this work and you think they'd be a great advocate, they can register online, and all of our online actions. So if you're ever curious about what issues are Pet Partners working on right now, what are we advocating for, you'll find those there and opportunities for you to take action, send a tweet, send a letter, sign a petition, that kind of stuff.
And as an example of what are some of those things you could do when you finish this webinar today, if you were so inspired, a great example of one activity we're encouraging our advocates to do is to encourage their lawmakers to reintroduce the PAWS Act. PAWS is a really common acronym we've come to discover, but this one is actually for the Puppies and Wounded Service Peoples Act. So if you care about veterans and veterans affairs and veterans who might need access to service animals, we would love to see the PAWS Act reintroduced. It died in committee last year, but it's a wonderful bipartisan bill that we think deserves to be reintroduced and voted on in this session.
Great. So I just want to kind of talk about a case study here that I think might help give you more of an idea of what these visits are like, and to understand from a peer what the entire experience is like. So we want to talk about Belen and Belen's handlers, Steve Fontenot and Dr. Kasia Kubina. They have been a registered pet partners team for 6 years. Belen is unfortunately a survivor of violence, and now that experience is something that Belen brings to interactions with children who are also unfortunately have survived violence. But it's a great opportunity for them to bond with Belen, to have something that they see in common with them. And based on a conversation that I had with Steve, that connection has been so valuable in helping these kids start to unlock and start to share their experience and talk when they had never talked before. And so Steve and his wife and Belen work with organizations that advocate for children's shelters in Texas, and they were asked if they would participate in one of these Capitol Hill days that we just talked about, where this organization organized meetings on the Hill. They had a rally before they went to their meetings, and they sent their advocates like Steve and Belen to go meet with legislators and talk about the importance of these shelters for children and funding for them and all the things that go involved with this kind of a meeting. And during my conversation with Steve, he came up with some really great tips based on his experience. And they really had a wonderful experience. They met with several legislators. Sometimes the meetings were really productive. Sometimes they weren't as productive. It was sometimes the legislator got on the floor just to pet Belen. So it was a great experience for them. And there were actually several legislators who tweeted out pictures and stories from their interaction with Belen. This is one here from a state senator who had shared this. I mean, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for not only opportunities to advocate and share our information, but to build these bridges and then to make these legislators advocates for our cause in their chambers where they work. And so that's really what Steve and Belen were able to do in the state capitol. So Steve was really awesome in sharing 3 tips for how to be successful based on his experience that he wanted to share with all of you, his peers. And I'm just going to summarize them quickly, and then we actually have a recording of him walking us through these tips. But they were to be confident, be prepared, and be flexible. So I'm going to play this clip now for you of Steve talking about his tips for being successful in a Capitol Hill event.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Fontenot, and along with my wife, Dr. Kasia Kubina, and our rescued husky Belen, we've been a registered pet partners team for 6 years. We have found that advocacy work can be a powerful and rewarding experience in its own right. It is a way to make a far-reaching and continued impact long after our time as a pet partners team is done. During our years in rescue and pet partners, we have had the opportunity to meet with many policymakers, such as city councilmen, mayors, and state legislators covering a wide range of topics such as animal rescue rights, animal-assisted therapy, and in support of some of the near and dear to our heart causes, such as greater services for the abused children victims that we visit with as Team Belen. And we've been asked to share some of our experiences and thoughts with you. There are 3 main areas we would emphasize to you as you prepare to meet with policymakers. 1, be prepared. Generally, you will only have a few minutes to discuss and share the reasons and goals for your visit that day. This may be with the policymaker themselves or just their staff. They are all incredibly busy and have lots of people making demands on their time, so you need to be prepared and be succinct. Know your short bullet point version of the information that you want to be able to share. Be able to answer questions quickly and succinctly, especially when dealing with staff. The more drawn out your discussion points and answers are, then the harder it is for them to share the information accurately with the policymaker themselves. Have information to leave for them to review, learn from, and refer back to after your visit is concluded. And remember, always leave contact information and encourage them to reach out if they should have any questions or would like additional information. Number 2, be confident, don't be intimidated. This is by far the hardest thing in the beginning, especially if you find yourself in a setting such as the Texas State Capitol as we were. You approach an office of a legislator and it's this solid oak door with no windows, and suddenly you are nervous. Your anxiety is starting to kick into high gear. Do I just walk in? Do I knock? Am I interrupting something? All these things go through your mind. But just stop, take a deep breath, and remember that door leads to a receptionist, so you won't be interrupting anything. Just stop, take a deep breath, and remember that you, as a taxpayer and constituent, you own that door. You own that building. You own that office. You own the furniture inside that office. So it is all okay. Just breathe. We generally knock as we're opening the door, walk in and introduce ourselves, and start to tell them why we are visiting today. And number 3, be flexible, be open-minded. As I already mentioned, you may meet with the staff instead of the actual policymaker. But hey, that's okay too. It's their job to listen to you, to help you if they can, and even to screen you. Remember, these people have demands for their time made upon them all day, every day. If you do get to meet with the actual policymaker, and if you have your fuzzy furry partner with you, don't be surprised if they spend those precious few minutes talking about your pet and your individual volunteer work instead of what you're there to pitch. This could mean that you are making a far bigger impact than you realize, or they may already be a big supporter of the cause and don't need to be sold. Remember, you are leaving information for them to read, review, and refer to. And most importantly, though, do not let your mind be consumed by a preconceived judgment of how a visit went, especially if you find yourself visiting with multiple legislators in a single day. Do not carry those feelings to the next visit. Some will go great and some won't. It's just that simple, and you will not always be able to tell which is which. On our visit to the Capitol, we walked out of a state senator's office thinking it went horrible, that we didn't matter to them at all. But within a couple of hours, they were blowing up their social media accounts with how great we were. So you just never really know. Do your thing, reset yourself, and move on to the next one. And always be sure to follow up your visit with an email or a phone call to the policymaker's office to thank them for their time.
So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing that with us. I think he said that one of the interactions that he had was with the state senator who had a really bad day and was dealing with some issues in a different committee, and that when Bellin walked in, that legislator got on the floor, sat with Bellin, and it was like having a therapy animal like visit with the client. So we're going to pause, and I want to check with Mary Margaret and see if we have any questions that have arisen during the presentation.
We don't have any yet, but now's your big chance. If there's something you've been dying to ask, everything you ever wanted to ask about grassroots advocacy, but were afraid to, here's your chance. We're here to answer any questions that come up. And if you're like me and you don't think about your question until the next morning when you're in the shower and having your first cup of coffee, that's okay too. You're welcome to email us at advocacy@petpartners.org, and we're happy to give you perspective, give you feedback, suggestions, and just hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, and for sure, I think some of the questions that may arise are the ones that will come once people have started following their legislator and they see an opportunity to attend a town hall or schedule a district meeting. And so, that's a great time to reach out to us if you have any questions about the logistics of doing something like that, or what's the first step.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we can offer, sometimes it's really important to localize the information you have for the meeting you're having. So if you're interested to know statistics like how many therapy animal teams are in your state or in your general area, or how many visits might have happened, we can help pull that information for you so that you can walk in with great details about how the human-animal bond impacts the constituents in that lawmaker's area.
And I think one more thing I would like to note is that Pet Partners is constantly monitoring legislation that is passing and being proposed in states all over the country. So if you live in a state that we see something that has caught our interest, we will reach out to you and let you know. Look for an email from us, and it'll be an educational email about this issue, and then potentially opportunities to take action. But that way, that'll be a cue to you that this might be an opportunity to reach out to the legislator that I've been following or potentially interacting with.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there are any questions?
Yeah, no questions yet, although I'll keep one eye peeled. But congratulations, everyone. You've all officially graduated from Advocacy Bootcamp. You've got some things to get yourself started with. Find those legislators and follow them, whether it's their newsletters or social media. Introduce yourself via written mail or an email if you prefer. And think about scheduling that first district meeting, district office meeting. Bring a friend, bring a couple friends, have an experience so you can see what it's like. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's happening. If you need assistance, don't hesitate to contact us. This has been a great opportunity to sort of get things started. Do some thinking, review those materials on petpartners.org/advocacy, and then click about Learn More. You can review some things there, and we'll continue to add more resources as time goes on. We're so appreciative of your time tonight. We know that this is after hours. You've all worked and have busy days. We appreciate you spending your time. As you leave the webinar, you will be asked to do a quick survey, just 3 questions about this experience and how we can make our next boot camp even more successful. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that. And if you have any questions, Brandon and I can stay on the line for a little bit and see what's happening. Oh, Brandon, it looks like I did just get a quick question here. So I've got a question about what the steps would be if we were in Canada. Can you speak to that at all? It's true that Pet Partners is primarily focusing our work in the US, but I assume there's probably some similarities.
There's actually a ton of similarities. So you'll obviously have your provincial representation, and that's probably the place where we're going to have the most impact. So it's great to find out who your MPPs are. They will have the same kind of social media and newsletter kind of updates. And so if you want to follow them, they also have occasional events in the community. So that's an opportunity to reach out to them. But if you do see something that's popped up on your radar in Canada that you're curious about or you think might be something that we want to advocate for, feel free to reach out to us and we can help provide whatever resources you might need to be able to get in touch with your MPP. But absolutely, it's the same approach. Canada is not too different in the way that they communicate with their constituents.
I've got another question here, Brandon. It's from someone who's never had the experience doing advocacy work before, and they'd really like to know if there was anyone in their area who might have some experience, who would be interested in shadowing. And what I'm going to say to that is that one of the things you may want to do if you're interested in talking to other people who are in advocacy, Pet Partners has what we call a volunteer center, which is totally free that you can sign up for. It's just a behind the password access. But as part of that volunteer center, we do have an online community. And that would be a lovely way to connect with people in different geographic areas who might be interested in maybe being a buddy for a district office or talking locally about localized issues that might be relevant for our grassroots advocates. That would be one way that you could self-serve in terms of finding other people who might be interested and in your area around advocacy.
And I think if we became aware of another advocate's attending a town hall or has set up an in-district meeting, and that person is comfortable with us sharing that information, we may also share those types of events with other advocates, and just to let them know this is something that they could attend.
Absolutely. That's actually a great idea. If you are planning to or interested in going to a district meeting that's scheduled, or you know there's a town hall and you want to find out if other people might be in the area, Pet Partners could potentially help contact people in that same area, and you could go with a friend, make a new advocacy friend.
With power members.
Well, I want to thank everyone so much. It's been wonderful to have you. Again, if you think of something else that we can be assistance with, don't hesitate to contact us. Brandon, a big thank you to you as well.
Thank you to everybody. I'm really looking forward to hearing about all the interactions you're going to start having with your legislators and all the relationships we're going to start building.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Enjoy the 15 minutes that you're getting back from your scheduled hour, and thank you so very much.
Bye-bye.